It's 6 o'clock in the evening. How you doing, everybody? Yeah, I know I'm in the workshop again. I'm not, I don't know, it's not really an electronic video, but I want to just give you a little bit of what I plan on doing for the grounding system in the shop here for this radio and for this. Now, I've been looking online for the proper way to ground a ham station, but of course this isn't a ham station. But I do want to minimize the noise that I'm getting. And this Rube Goldberg system that I've got here is not going to stay very long. I have ordered a 3-position switch, which is going to be going up right in this area here. It's going to switch the 35-foot long wire antenna between this radio and this radio. And the third position, according to the switch, the third position is supposed to be grounded, so not a big deal. I can always take off the coax on the back of this radio if I wanted to use another radio. But the point I want to make is I want to ground these radios, and what I did is I ordered 10 feet of 1-inch wide tinned copper braid, and it's going to be terminated at the ground stake outside. It'll only be terminated at one end. It'll go down to the ground stake outside. The ground stake, sadly, is only in the ground about a foot, if even that. And now the ground is probably frozen and I can't get nothing in it, to drive any more in it. So that'll have to wait till springtime. I ordered some cheapy, $3.50 for 5 of these from eBay, China, PL259s, which one of them I'm going to put on the end of the RG59 coax, but I have to wait until my adapters come in that screw in the back of these. Also from, no, they're not from China, they're Radio Shack. They're 2 for, I think, $3.99, counting the shipping. I got these off of eBay, 3-foot RG58AU cable, in other words, a flexible one, although it's a little stiff because the shop is still cold, not real bad, but, And RG58 is fine. I'm only receiving. I'm not transmitting on it. And, so it's not a problem. And what I'm going to do is there's enough wire to reach from the back of this Kenwood here up to the switch up here. And that'll be radio number 1. And then I got an identical piece over here, which just happens to have a RCA plug adapter on the end of it. So if I wanted to plug in my Radio Shack DX440, I could do that too. So that's just screwed on there temporarily, just so I wouldn't lose the connector. So what I'm going to do is to put the switch here, and normally you would switch between antennas. Well, I only got one antenna, so it's going to be used in reverse. It's going to be switching radios using just one antenna, because that's all I've got right now, and it's only for receiving anyhow. Now I'm getting a lot of noise, but a lot of it's atmospheric, but there is not a very good ground in here. This ground here is basically the shielding of the coax, which is back here. It's just stuck in here. It's a Rube Goldberg for now. And when I get it set up, I'm going to have the switch going from either listening to this or listening to this. The way I got this set up right now, both of these radios are in parallel. They're tied together on this coax with these clip leads. And I just got the ground wire and the antenna connected to the SO239 wound around each other, twisted so that it won't pick up too much noise. And it's a Rube Goldberg, like I say, but that's only temporary. So when I get better shielding in here, it should be good. The only thing is I don't have a decent ground out there. And in this area, I'd probably have to drive 4 or 5 little short ground rods, maybe a foot or two long, in a row, and then just daisy chain them with some heavy wire. I checked the price of wire down at my local hardware store. They have the heavy copper wire, which is what they use in, I guess, for electrical panel grounding. It's bare copper. The braid I got, I ordered 10 feet. Now, these shelves here are from here to here is 36 inches, so about 3.5 feet to reach here. That's right to the wall. Now, I don't want to put the braid to the outside because I don't think braid will hold up from what I've been reading, because it'll pick up water and everything, and it'll get corroded even though it's copper. So the braid is going to come to the wall outside. In that corner is where my Mickey Mouse ground stake is. I call it Mickey Mouse because it's only in the ground less than a foot. And I showed you that if you look back on my other videos. And what I'm going to do is to have the braid come right to the inside wall. Then I'll put a bolt through, clamp the braid to the bolt. I'll find an outlet, an eyelet or something to put on the end of the braid, and then put a bolt through there, and then on the other side of the wall have my heavy-duty copper ground wire. The 14 gauge wire that I got out there now, coming off the long wire antenna down, I'll probably use the heavy ground wire and replace that 14 wire with the heavy wire. This is 160 meters here. It's
I've already seen this before.
1930 KC.
Here, tons of aluminum tubing, all different sizes, shapes, everything. And one day I said.
So of course I get 160 meters on this too, but it won't receive sideband. I have to really play around with the BFO, the beat frequency oscillator, and then half the time I don't get anything in good. So that's why Mike gave me this. Now, this loading here affects not only the receive of this radio.
Not too much. That's too much. But you know what? If I told that guy $50, he still wouldn't have bought it.
Yeah.
That piece of tubing probably nowadays, I'm guessing it would cost you $300.
So, because these radios are in parallel, I don't have this on now. This loading here, which affects your your receive also, affects the tuning on that too, because they're sharing the same antenna. They're literally in parallel. I spoke to Mike about that, and he said that's normal because you're parallel in the radios. Okay, but when I get the switch in, it's going to be either this one or this one, but not a problem. All I got to do is just reach up and switch it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is to run this 1-inch wide braid in back of both of these radios that I just showed you before. In back of the Hallicrafter S86 and in back of the Kenwood. So the S86 is right here. Okay, and the S86 is a series wired radio, as you know if you've been following my videos. but it's on an isolation transformer. It's on a dedicated isolation transformer that is only used for this radio. It's not the radio. It's not the isolation transformer that I've been using up here for my bench. Okay, so on the back of the radio, and I already passed this information, this question to Mike, and on the back of the S86, you have an antenna, antenna 1, and a ground. Okay? The ground screw goes through a 0.01 microfarad capacitor and then is connected to the chassis of the S86. So Mike says at those frequencies, that capacitor is like a dead short to RF. So that's what they commonly use for these hot chassis radios. So what I'm going to do, there's a jumper between the ground and this. It's on the radio. It was on the radio when I got it. So antenna 1 and ground are connected together. So it's always left that way, and if you trace the circuit out, it's in one of the antenna coils that goes into the radio, completes the circuit. So my coaxial shield, and I'm not very good at drawing this, so I'm going to draw it this way. That's the shield, that's the coax, RG58 in this case, or 59, I'm sorry. The antenna center conductor out of the RG59 is going to go like that. That's the way the radio is hooked up now. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a ground lug on the back of the S86 right here. But don't have one now. I'm going to drill a hole and put a wing nut and a ground. And that is going to be bonded to the tinned copper braid, 1 inch wide. Okay? Now, on the Kenwood, there is already a wing nut for grounding on the back of that radio. That radio has a 2-prong plug on it. From what I've been reading, you don't want to use a 3rd-prong plug, but there's controversy about that anyways on ham radio equipment if you're transmitting, because there's a ground loop problem. Okay, I'm not transmitting, but I want to get set up so I can minimize my noise. Okay, so on the back of the Kenwood, there's going to be a wire coming off of it and bonded over here to this ground braid. Now, I got 10 foot of ground braid here, which is more than enough that I can run the ground braid around here, over here, and stop right here above my isolation transformer. And the reason I say that is I have a programmable scanner that I was thinking of sticking under here and then just having a little scanner antenna outside the shed. Probably in the springtime I'll do that. And I could use that ground braid as a ground for the scanner as well. It's a Radio Shack, I can't remember, 2025 or something like that, scanner that is in the big shed right now, and I might put it to use in here. Okay, so this is the Kenwood and this is the S86. Now, the way I got the Kenwood wired now, over on this side is a SO239 connector, and I got a piece of heavy wire stuck in the center hole of the SO239. I have it coming out like this. Then I have a piece of wire coming out off of this, under this wing screw here, the ground screw, coming around and just twisted around this, which is what I showed you before. And that's my connection to my coaxial and the shield. So that's my Rube Goldberg. And then the way I got this set up, I have it continued out to here. So it's a mess, but it's temporary. So what I got on order is the braid. I just ordered that today. 10 feet of it, tinned copper, made in USA, 1 inch wide. Now, I was looking online, and most of your ham shacks use like 2.5, 3 inch wide copper. But I'm not transmitting, so it doesn't matter. And even if I was in the future, which I doubt very highly because I'm still studying and I'm not getting anywhere. I'm taking online tests and not doing too good, so I'm not going to get into that. But anyways, so we got this wire. This not drawn to scale, but this piece can come around here and will go where my scanner may go, and I can use that ground for that. So it's all going to be tied into one common point. Over here is the wall, the outside wall. This braid will end at the wall. There'll be a stud and a washer and a bolt coming through the wall, probably be galvanized. And at that point there'll be an eye hook on it, a cable eyelet, like a battery terminal. And then my copper braid will come down to my ground stake, which would be right here, which is where it is now. And that's how that'll be. Now, the spark plug lightning arrestor, which should not be very hard to do. I've got plenty of old spark plugs around. I'm not sure where to set the gap, though. Most of them are on 30 thousandths, but I could bring them closer. Let me turn the page over and draw you what I want to do for that. Okay. My glasses on here. Now I got to draw. Well, I'm going to have to do it this way, and then I'll turn it, because I can't do it sideways very well. But maybe you can make it out, and I'll turn it around after for you. Okay, the way my long wire is now, my 35-foot antenna, an insulator goes like this. The insulator goes like this, and then that's the tree. All right, that's my long wire antenna. If you followed that video right now, okay. So now the way my wire comes now, the coax is tied right here, comes down to the tree, goes down a little ways, and then goes under the eave of the snowblower shed, and then into my shop, like that. Okay, that's the coax, okay? Off of that, I have my ground wire, which happens to be 14 gauge, tied on the shield right here, coming down to the back of this tree and down to that stake that's in the corner that I showed you, if you follow those videos, right there. So what I figure on doing is to hang my spark plug, instead of upsetting this connection here, I'll just scrape over here a little bit, maybe an inch away, into this main wire right here. The 35, this is a 35-foot antenna here, the long wire. I'll scrape, put my spark plug right there. Like that. Spark plug's awful big, isn't it? Okay, and the spark plug will be sitting, hanging on there, and there'll be I'll figure some way to fasten the ground to the shell of the spark plug. I haven't seen any videos on spark plug lightning arresters, but from what I've seen on homemade ones, they're usually in some kind of a container, like a pill bottle. I see one guy made one in this pill bottle, didn't use a spark plug, used a spark gap, and another one made as something else, but I never seen a spark plug one on YouTube. I've been looking. Okay, so it's literally going to hang there, and then I'll run the ground wire over here. And that's the only way I know how to do it. I don't want to go out and buy a expensive lightning arrestor. You know, I just don't want to do that. And spark plug is a spark gap. If you adjust it right, it should work pretty good. Of course, this ground wire is 14, but I'm going to change that to a heavy copper when I get the money to buy that. And it's going to be in the springtime. And being that this is only receiving, I'm not going to worry too much about it. If this wire is too expensive, I'll just dispense with this right now and just make sure everything's disconnected in the shop, like I'm doing. There's no thunderstorms now at this time of the year, so I'm not too worried about it. But a lot of guys build these things inside of a container or something. Now, another thing I can do, I'm a terrible artist, and hopefully you can see that. Let me just show you what I did here, but I draw like a kid, I'm telling you. This is the tree. This is the antenna. This is just a little piece of the long wire which comes off the insulator. In this case, this is the coax. I'm not drawing the ground wire at this time. This is the coax. It runs over under the eave in the corner. If you looked at the video, you'll see how I did it, and goes up. So that way no water gets in the building. It goes up and then into the shop. Now, over here is my ground rod. Pathetic looking ground rod, isn't it? Nobody said I could draw. That's the spark plug. Boy, I'll tell you, I'll never make an artist. Okay, what I could do is to literally ground the spark plug, clamp it to the ground stake, so that the frame of the spark plug is grounded to the ground stake. And I don't really want to do this, but I would have to cut a hole or cut into this coax at this point, tack in a wire into the center conductor of the RG59 and bring it down to the spark plug. Well, if I did that, I have got myself an unshielded vertical antenna right here, which is going to pick up a lot of noise because it's right on top of the shop. So it's going to pick up fluorescent lights and everything else. So I really don't know where to put the spark plug other than hanging it off the antenna. I haven't figured that out yet, but that's the method to my madness. Okay, so anyways, that's what I want to do. And basically, it's not really made to keep RF out of the shop because I doubt I'm going to ever be transmitting. Like I say, I've been hacking away at this general thing here for every night, but I don't stay with it very long, and I'm failing miserably on it. So if I can get a quiet receive, that's all I'm really interested in. I think this ground bond, and bonding these radios is good. The point that Mike was telling me, and also what I've been reading, is you want a 1-point ground. So there'll be no grounding at this point, and this here will not be grounded to power line either. Okay, the power coming out to the shed is about 75 feet at least. Now I've also read that you're supposed to have all the grounds. Like this one here, the ground stake, is supposed to be with the power line. Impossible. I'm 75 feet away from it. Can't do that. So this will be a separate ground, but it's not going to be connected to the power line. In other words, this is going to be the radio ground only. So just adding that ground, as poor as this stake is in the ground, helped my reception quite a bit. If I can get this stake or a couple more in the ground deeper, I'll be fine. I'm going to try to find a 4-foot ground rod. I cannot drive I wouldn't even be able to drive that in. And maybe I can get a couple of 4-footers this spring and try to drive them in. I can't drive it sideways. That's a lot of work. I've seen guys drive them with a pneumatic tool made for that. Yeah, you rent it at $60, $70 to rent it. I don't have that kind of money. So it isn't worth it. It's just I'm just a shortwave listener. That's all I am. So I just want to show you what I plan on doing. And the switch, that's another thing I'm not positive about. I don't see anything on the internet about that. The switch I ordered, let me see if I can draw it for you. Nothing fancy. I think it's around $10 or $11 or something. It has one SO239 here, an SO239 here, an SO239 here, and one knob. Okay, it's a Chinese special. The reviews on it was not too bad. One guy says he had to solder. They didn't even solder inside the switch. So when I go to get it, I'll open it up, make sure that they soldered everything. The question is, should I bond this case of the switch to this ground braid? In other words, should I bring this ground braid under the switch? Have the switch sitting on top of it? Because then you got a good ground. That's the question. It's very confusing, and there's pros and cons. Everybody's got their own opinion about grounding. So I'm not going to worry about it if it's not recommended to ground the switch to the braid. I won't do it. So that's it. And that's all I've got to say tonight. This is just a electronic video, which I know that there are a few of the viewers out there that don't like them, but I'm sorry. You know, I can't please everybody. Okay, This is the loading control. Now listen to this radio here. See how that affects it? You can null out the noise. This is what I mean. I got a lot of noise in this shop, and I think I might have lost some ground, because when I first put it in, I didn't get all this as bad. Now I got a lot of noise in this shop, and that's what the whole idea of the grounding is. But unless all this braid isn't going to do any good unless I get a good ground outside, and the ground is frozen now, so it's going to have to wait a spring. So I figured I'd get this stuff and have it on hand, because I may not have the money next year. So get it while I can. So we'll turn this light off. Turn the shop light off. LED. Of course, this is a sideband. But you can hear it's a lot quieter without that. I'm hoping that once I get this bonded here and get some shielding on here instead of all this Mickey Mouse wiring that you can see here, pick up less noise. So that's it. I know it's a boring electronic video again, but you know, just the way it is. You can't do anything outside in the bad weather. Too cold, too much snow, too much ice. So that's why I got my little man cave here. And it's not real cold, so I didn't need the propane heater in here. So when the time comes, I'm gonna pull this stuff out and get behind here and staple that braid, that 1-inch braid all across the back here. And probably bring it around here too. Actually, I'm going to be bringing it down here, and not up here, down here across. And I might bring it over here, but I'm not 100% sure. I've got 10 feet. And that's how I'm going to do that. So, thank you for being bored once again. It's 6:45. I started this video at almost 6 o'clock. So it's another long one, but of course it wasn't 45 minutes long. I don't even want to know, but I'll bet you it's quite long, like all my videos. Have a good night, everybody. And if I don't make a video before Christmas, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to all you all out there. And we'll catch you on a video real soon in the future.